Hello, y'all. This is the guided notes for the Iliad, Book 22. So, Book 22, like we talked about in class, picks up in the middle of Achilles' rage over the death of Patroclus. Here you will see a scene from the conclusion of that rage as Achilles pulls around the body of Hector. So, pretty famous painting there. Let's go ahead and begin talking about it again. It's going to be important for you to take notes, so I highly encourage you to do so. So Book 22 begins near the end of the Aristeia of Achilles. An Aristeia, you'll see it spelled right there, is a scene or moment that focuses on the glorious actions of one character. So a scene or moment that focuses on the glorious actions of one character. There are lots of Aristeias throughout the epic. Both Greeks and Trojans have them. Diomedes, Agamemnon, Hector have Aristeias. So Achilles is angry. Um, he has decided to come back into the war because of the death of Patroclus. And so, again, we have this sort of insight into what motivates Achilles. And so, yes, he's there because of Patroclus, but again, he has that prophecy about his life and his death. And so, he has chosen Kleos and honor over a long life. The most important thing that motivates him is the Manus, though. Manus, which is that Menis. Manus, of course, translates into rage. I believe I told you this at the beginning of our study of the book. We first see his Manus when Achilles' Themis, his right and wrong, is violated with Agamemnon. However, he sits out of the war because of the violation of that Themis. He has Manus there. But there's a stronger Manus than the violation of his Themis of that right and wrong. That Manus comes because of personal loss, because of the loss of Patroclus. And so now Achilles is no longer mad at Agamemnon. His rage is now shifted to the killer of Patroclus, which is Hector. So in the middle of his Aristeia, Achilles is attacking Trojans, but really he's looking to find Hector because he wants to avenge that personal loss. Hector, of course, we see at the beginning of Book 22, he's told to go outside the Scaean gate. And the reason why he goes out is because he wants to defend his city. Remember, Hector is motivated really by two main things. First of all, he loves the city of Troy, and he wants to protect it. He is its greatest defender. And the second thing is he wants to protect his family. Remember in Book 6, we have that heartbreaking scene where Andromache is saying, please don't go. I have this vision that you're going to die when you leave the city. I have this vision that I'm going to be sold into slavery. And then we have this whole moment with the Astyanax. So at this moment in Book 22, where Hector is leaving the city to go outside the Scaean gates to go face Achilles, he is literally sacrificing himself for the rest of the Trojan army. The Trojans are streaming back into the city. They're running from the rage of Achilles, and Hector steps out. You have this really moving scene where Priam and Hecuba, they're standing on top of the gates, and they call out to Hector. And of course, they don't want him to go out because they know if Hector is to fight with Achilles, it's probably not going to go in favor of him. Priam begs Hector to come back in. He tells him, listen, I've lost sons. I cannot bear to lose you, Hector. And again, that's going back to this idea of fatherhood. How fatherhood is such a big, important thing that keeps showing up, a motif that keeps showing up in this epic. And Priam begs him, please don't go. So when he leaves the gate, Hector goes through lots of emotional phases, we could say. The first one, he has decided to go outside the city, to walk outside the gate. People are running past him to get in, but he has decided he is going to go outside. And so in this moment, he stands in front of the gate, stands there solid, and he's alone. And so we see him being resolute. He's resolved to defend the city and to die doing that. So that's a big moment. However, he knows that Achilles is stronger than him. He knows that if the two of them fought, that Achilles would probably win. So he's scared, he's terrified, and so he begins thinking of different solutions. Instead of fighting Achilles, one of the things he thinks about is, okay, we could give the Greeks Helen back. Maybe then Achilles would be less angry. Or maybe we could give him half of the riches from Troy. Then he would be at peace. He wouldn't be so angry. He wouldn't be attempting to kill me. And another thing is he thinks, you know what, if I go in front of Achilles without armor on, or I go without out a sword or a spear or a shield, he will take mercy on me because he's unarmed. But of course, you've read it, is Achilles in the middle of his Aristeia, in the middle of his Manus? Is he really going to stop and think rationally with Hector? And Hector knows he's not going to, and he even says like Achilles would reject this, and Achilles would cut him down. And so we sort of get the mental process. He goes from being resolute, I'm going to defend the city. Then he begins thinking, oh, I hope there's a different thing that I can do, a different solution. And then once he realized that Achilles is incredibly angry right now, he's filled with rage, filled with wrath, he begins getting scared. Achilles sees Hector, and he starts going towards him. He wants to take revenge for the death of Patroclus, and so he goes to him. And now Hector gets scared. He loses that resolve, and he becomes terrified about his fate with Achilles. And so we have this weird moment where Achilles is chasing Hector, and they go around and around and around the city 3 times. And Hector is terrified. Think about the perspective of the other Trojans. They're watching from the top of the city walls this traumatic event. As Hector is literally fleeing for his life. He's no longer courageous. And now I think it'd be really easy for us to be like, oh, Hector, where's your honor here? And I think that may have been the way that the Greek audience perceived this. But let's think about it from a different perspective. Here, Hector, he's not a god. He is not filled with wrath the way that Achilles is. He is scared. And fear, terror, that is a very human emotion. And so I think this scene where he is so afraid really goes to almost humanize Hector. So the goddess Athena disguises herself as a guy named Deophobus, Deophobus, and Athena as Deophobus comes up to him and says, okay, Hector, if you walk up to Achilles, I will go and I will fight behind you. And so he decides, okay, you know what, we can do this. So he turns around. But the humanity of Hector is what's important for this scene. Some scholars, one scholar really like what he has to say about the Iliad, has described the Iliad as the tragedy of Hector. The tragedy of Hector. Of course, a tragedy is a story that ends sadly. It's traumatic ending for the hero. So this scholar thinks, you know what, Achilles isn't, for us, for modern audiences, he isn't the hero of the Iliad, it's Hector. Hector is the one with humanity. Hector is the one who shows human emotion. He does not get taken over by this god-like, this beast-like rage like Achilles does. He's trying to defend his home. And so Hector is very human. And this fear, these stages that he goes through, these emotional changes, the determined to defend his city, the bartering, the fear, and then finally that sort of almost sad acceptance of what is going to happen makes him a very human character. And so we had this moment after Deiphobus has told. It's right before Deiphobus shows up, where we have really Zeus thinking, I don't want to kill Hector. I love Hector. Hector is a good fighter. I do not want to kill him. And so the goddess Athena comes up to Zeus and says, you know what, you have to do this. This is fate. And Zeus says, okay, we need to weigh what's going to happen. And so Zeus literally takes scales, and he puts Achilles on one side, or the spirit of Achilles on one side, and he puts Hector on the other side. And whoever is weighed heavier, that would be the person it's their time to die. And he literally puts them in the scales, and Hector's scale goes down further, goes down to Hades. And so it's determined that despite what Zeus wants, despite what many of the gods want, it is Hector's time to die. And so again, this is just emphasizing and underscoring this idea that the gods are below fate for the Greeks. Even they cannot control fate. It is Hector's fate to die. It is his time. And so Athena disguises herself as Deiphobus to trick Hector into going to face Achilles. as they go to fight, Deiphobus disappears, and we have this really almost sad moment where Hector realizes it's his time. He goes to face Achilles, and I can't think of anything more noble or heroic than that. Going to meet death in one noble, final self-sacrificial action. And so Hector throws his spear at Achilles. He misses. Achilles comes towards him, but Hector isn't willing to stand there and wait. He takes his sword and he charges after Achilles. And we know how it ends. As Hector is charging at him, Achilles is able to spear him, and he takes his life. With Hector's dying breath, though, this is incredibly important. He utters one final curse, Hector's curse. He says, "Paris and Apollo are going to kill you, Achilles, at the Scaean gate." Paris and Apollo are going to kill you. He makes that one last final promise. And of course, Achilles is like, "Please, whatever, I don't care. Say all you want. No god can kill me." And with that last breath, Hector dies. He passes away. So Achilles, of course, is incredibly angry. He has that meanness because of the loss of Patroclus. After he kills Hector, though, we see him do something terrible. It's terrible in our eyes. It's even worse in the eyes of the Greeks. He mistreats the corpse of Hector. At one point before he kills Hector, Hector runs up to Achilles and he says, "Hey, we need to make a deal. You will not abuse my body, and I will not abuse your body." And Achilles says, "You know what, I don't care. I hate you that much that I'm going to stab your body." He says something to the effect of like, "Wolves do not talk to lambs. Lions are not concerned with people." And he says, "You know, I'm going to do whatever I want to your body because of this meanness, because of this rage." And so Achilles refuses this agreement with Hector to properly bury him. And remember, burial is a huge, important deal for the Greeks. After Achilles kills Hector, suddenly we get the rest of the Greeks run up, and they begin stabbing Hector's body, and Achilles lets this happen. Again, it's that abuse of the body. It's the ultimate final insult to let people do this. Achilles takes it one step further, and we get almost this gruesome scene where Achilles pierces Hector's ankles and ties a rope around him. Ties rope through the ankles and drags him behind his chariot around the city. And so he is mistreating the corpse, and this is an intense part of this meanness, this rage. It goes even beyond the other Aristeas of the other soldiers. Diomedes at one point, sees a god during his, and he stops because he has respect. But Achilles is so far gone because of this meanness that he is abusing the body of Hector. And we need to talk a little bit about the armor that Achilles is wearing. That Hector is wearing. Remember, Hector killed Patroclus. After he kills Patroclus, he takes the armor that Patroclus was wearing. And if you recall, the armor that Patroclus was wearing was the armor from Achilles. The armor he borrowed from Achilles to lead the Myrmidons out. And so when Achilles kills Hector, he's killing really almost the identity of himself. Remember, we talked about armor as such a huge part of someone's identity. And so when Achilles goes up and he slays him, he's in effect symbolically killing his own identity. This meanness, this wrath of Achilles has gone to such extreme depths. He feels it so deeply that he is almost, in a way, killing his own person. He's almost killing his own self by attacking this identity. This need to revenge the death of Patroclus, this need to brutally kill Hector, this need to abuse Hector's corpse, is in some ways a destruction of his own self. He has lost his identity. He's no longer a human being. He's no longer a hero. He's become like a beast, like an animal. And so this killing of the person wearing his armor is almost a putting of himself to death. And that's a big deal. It's a loss of himself. Last thing we need to talk about is the reaction of the Trojans to Hector's death and seeing his corpse get desecrated. Priam, of course, is watching from the top of the walls. And again, going back to this idea of the father and son relationship there, he is distraught at the loss of his son. And so we see people are having to hold him back from running down to go beg Achilles to stop abusing the body, to give him the body back. And so he wants to go ask Achilles, please let me go. If Achilles sees me, if he sees this old man, he'll be reminded of his father. Okay, he'll take pity on his father. Okay, he'll see his father in me. He'll see Peleus. That's a big moment. It's crucial to understand. Priam wants to go talk to Achilles about fatherhood, about being a son, about the loss of a son, about how that affects a father, and that's a big deal. Of course, they restrain Priam, which is a good thing because Achilles would probably have killed him in that moment, but they restrain him. Last but not least, we need to talk about Andromache and Astyanax. If you recall, in Book 6, the last thing that Hector says to Andromache about Astyanax is that I predict that even if I die, Astyanax will go on to be an even braver warrior, even better warrior for the city of Troy than I am. And so now that Hector is dead, we have to see if that prophecy is going to come true. Andromache, though, is not as optimistic. She says that Astyanax is going to grow up, and because his father has been killed, he'll be like an orphan. And an orphan is almost like an outcast. And so she is devastated that this is going to happen to Astyanax. She's more concerned about how it's going to affect Astyanax than she is her own grief, which is really telling about how important it is, that father and son relationship. Okay, so that's going to conclude it for the Book 22 guided notes. Again, some key things to make sure that you definitely have down. First of all, you need to be able to define Aristeia. You need to be able to tell me what it is and describe Achilles' Aristeia. Second, you need to be able to discuss the Manus of Achilles, how this Manus is different from his Manus with Agamemnon. The idea that Patroclus, the Manus at personal loss, is bigger than the Manus at Themis, or at violation of Themis. Also be able to discuss Hector and fate, this humanity of Hector, this tragedy of Hector, how the gods sort of let this happen. Again, that's a very, very important topic. Also be able to talk about Priam and the loss of his son, all of that deal about fatherhood and Peleus, that's important as well. And then finally, you need to be able to tell me what the curse of Hector is. Make sure you are aware of that, because that's going to be important as well. Okay, as always, there's going to be the discussion post. Make sure you were doing that. Directions will be posted on Canvas. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you next time.